What's up, ladies and gents? It's your boy Neosynthesis coming at you with an updated Drytron deck profile. I'm still learning this deck bit by bit. I've made it to gold. I'll be platinum probably by the end of today or tomorrow, and then platinum 1 probably in a similar time frame to that. But I just wanted to run through my updated deck list. This is something that I'm a lot happier with than the other decks, which were very not good. So this is actually like a good deck list that if you build, you'll be happy with. So first and foremost, we're going to go through the Drytron monsters. We start off with 3 Drytron Alpha Thubin, and I'll quickly explain what the Drytron cards do. So every Drytron shares the effect that it cannot be normal summon or set, and it must be a special summon with the effect of a Drytron card. That's important for the second effect, which all the Drytrons have, that if they're in the hand or in the graveyard, you can tribute 1 monster that cannot be normal or special summoned, or cannot be normal summoned, like a Drytron, for example, or other cards we'll get to later, are typically better to tribute, but, and then when you tribute those cards and the card is special summoned, you are going to get an effect. In the case of Alpha Thubin adds you a ritual monster from your deck to your hand. So there's, as you guys can see, there's some ritual monsters as we get further down. But this is Alpha. This is your best or second best. This is the other card that's tied for the best or second best Drytron. It has the same Drytron effect where you can special summon it from the hand by tributing. Hand or graveyard, rather, by tributing. And when this one is special summoned, you can get when this card is summoned with this effect, rather, you can get the any ritual spell. So you just get Voldemonist Drytron, which we'll talk about again later as we get further into the profile. The other 2 Drytrons that you run, so let me explain this. These cards are starter Drytrons. They get you cards that allow you to do more and go on and on. A card like Gamma El Tannin, this is the next Drytron that we run. This card's effect is when it's special summoned, you can special summon a Drytron from your graveyard. You don't get their effects when they're special summoned or anything like that, so you're really only using it for material or tribute for a Drytron or a ritual summon or whatnot, or link material. Anyway, I was just gonna say, we don't run 3, or we don't run more than 1 of this because it requires setup. Same thing is true with Delta. Delta's effect is just that when you special summon this card through its effect, you can reveal a ritual monster or spell and then just draw a card. You're going to be searching ritual spells and monsters quite often. These cards are searchers for those, for sure. And then the next engine piece that we're running is a card called Diviner of the Herald. What Diviner of the Herald says is if this card is normal summoner set, you can send 1 fairy monster from your deck to your graveyard, deck or extra deck to the graveyard. Very important, that extra deck part that I neglected to say at first. And if you do, increase this card's level by that monster's level until the end of this turn. If this card is distributed, which you're just about never doing, you can special summon 1 level 2 or lower fairy monster from your hand or deck, except Diviner of the Herald. And then you can only use each of the Diviner of the Herald effects per turn. So you're not hardly ever tributing this card. Most of the time, you're going to be sending a level 4 monster, making this level 6, and overlaying it with another card that we'll talk about in a little bit later. But this card is really, really good. It is a light fairy, which we will get into as we kind of continue down in. It's great ritual support. I'll explain. It doesn't seem like it's ritual support, but I'll explain how it's ritual support as we continue on. If you don't know the rest of the card pool, that probably doesn't make sense. The next engine card that we run is this card called Eva. This is a really, really strong card because it's limited in America, along with other cards we'll talk about in this deck list. But this card just says that if it's sent to the graveyard, you can banish up to 2 other light fairy monsters from your field and or graveyard, pretty much always banishing from the graveyard, and you're pretty much always banishing Diviner and Herald of Orange Light. There's other light fairies in the deck, but you're using this to get you more fuel for a card that will, basically the boss monster of the deck loves Ava, and I'll explain why he loves Ava later. But all you really need to know for now is that when he's sent to the graveyard, we get 2 searches from our deck, essentially, if we have setup for him. The last quote-unquote engine monster that we have that's not a ritual is going to be Herald of Orange Light. It doesn't really do anything for us in our hand, It doesn't really do anything for us engine-wise. In reality, it's a hand trap, but it's a searchable hand trap. So anything that can search a light fairy, which we'll get into later, what can search light fairies. Eva is one of those cards. It allows you to, basically when your opponent activates a monster effect, i.e. typically a hand trap, you can send this card and one other fairy monster from your hand to the graveyard and negate that activation and destroy it. It's quite strong in your hand going second, because, well, A, it's like a searchable hand trap, and B, well, you're not going to be searching it, obviously, on their first turn if they're going first, but if you draw this card on their first turn, you can use it, which makes it a little bit more flexible. The searchable aspect is also really, really strong about it. And yeah, it's just more light fairies for us to search with Eva, and it is it's actually a pretty good effect. And you can oftentimes tutor this card at the, nearer to the beginning of your combo, so that you have it in your hand if your opponent is going to activate an Ash Blossom or activate a Maxi or an Effect Veiler. So that can be quite strong to save you from really powerful hand trap monster effects, which are really popular in this format. Alright, for the rituals. First off, I'll talk about Cyber Angel Ben 10. So Cyber Angel Ben 10 is a level 6 ritual monster with 1800 attack, 1500 defense. I wanted to mention the stats really quick, and I'll mention the stats on all the Drytron, the ritual monsters, because of how Meteoric Drytron works. But the first effect, which hardly ever comes up, I don't think it's come up for me yet, but I can imagine situations where it does. If this card destroys a monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original defense in the graveyard. If this card is tributed, you can add 1 light fairy monster from your deck to your hand. Now that's obviously the effect we care about. Ben 10 can search Ben 10, which is quite rare. I would say for most cards they are limited against searching themselves, and Ben 10 does not have any once per turn limitations, so it's quite strong. Oftentimes you're going to be searching your Diviner of the Herald, which is another light fairy. I mentioned if you want to play around hand traps and you don't have this yet, you can search for Herald of Orange Light. That's another strong option. The other 2 cards you can search for, we'll get to a little later. I'll mention that they're searchable by Ben 10. But for now, all you really need to know is that it's level 6, so if we send a level 4 monster with Herald, we can overlay for a rank 6 Xyz, and that if it's tributed, you get to tutor a light fairy monster from your deck to your hand. So first off, I'll talk about Natasha. Natasha is probably the card that I needed the most convincing to run. So when I first started playing this deck, I was drawing this card a ton. I drew it like 3 games in a row, and it just kind of it tilted me a little bit, and I just did not want to play it, but this card is actually insanely strong and worth running as a card you don't want to draw in your deck. So this card, I'll just read the effects because they're a little bit complicated. So the first thing you need to understand about a monster like a ritual monster or a Blackluster Soldier card is another card that functions in the same way, or a synchro summon or a synchro monster. So there's a card called Starlight Road that special summons Stardust Dragon from your extra deck, and then Stardust Dragon has an effect that it can special summon itself from the graveyard after it uses its effect to prevent destruction. But if you summon it with Starlight Road, the card was quote-unquote improperly summoned, so it won't be able to, or it was never quote-unquote properly summoned. So we're not going to improperly summon Natasha in any way, but we won't be able to. It needs to be properly summoned before it can be revived from the graveyard, is basically the rules explanation that you need to know for this deck. And I did mention kind of in my last few videos, this is a very complex strategy. It's not easy whatsoever. So that's why there's going to be some more. If I brush over something, feel free to ask, but there's going to be a lot more times where I kind of have to stop and elaborate on a concept. So now that we kind of have that out of the way, the card's effect is once per turn you can target 1 face-up monster you control, gain life points equal to half its attack. Now that's not really important. We don't care about that. Oftentimes you're just going to be getting 1250 life points. Obviously do it every time you can do it. There's no once per turn clause on this card. And then the part that we actually really do care about, because this card is extremely powerful in the matchup against Eldritch, which I think is the most popular and strongest deck in the format, is when a ritual monster... Oh, never mind, sorry. If this card is in your graveyard, that's an effect that we don't care about, basically. When a ritual monster you control is targeted, you can negate the attack. So we can negate infinite attacks, which is kind of good if your opponent has no way to destroy it. But that's not really going to come up that often, it's not really what we want to be doing with this deck. But the important thing is if this card is in your graveyard, you can banish one other Cyber Angel monster from your graveyard, always going to be Ben 10 pretty much. Target one monster your opponent controls, special summon this card, and if you do, take control of that monster permanently. So if you special summon this card from your graveyard and take control of an Eldritch, the Golden Lord, oftentimes that's going to be a big enough blowout to just win the game if they're not able to negate it. And even if they do, bidding out one of their back rows is how you beat Eldritch, just grinding them down, out-resourcing them, and just basically playing around the fact that they're playing a very simple deck with not a lot of pathways for them to kind of play it, and you're playing it the exact opposite with a million different pathways and a million different play lines. All right. So for the last not Drytron card in the main monster section of the deck, we have Herald Voldemonist. This is the boss monster of the deck. It's ultra rare for a reason. It's completely bonkers insane. So we ritual summon it. Basically, we don't care. We ritual summon it with our ritual card. We'll get into later on. But the important effect of this card is basically when a monster would be special summoned. So that's like when they synchro, Xyz, Link. You can send one fairy monster from your hand to the graveyard, negate that special summon, and then when they special summon a monster inherently, or they activate a spell trap or monster effect, we can discard a fairy and negate it. So I mentioned earlier, this card loves Eva, because when it discards Eva can search 2 cards for us, and that basically gives us 2 more things to negate. So that's at minimum, if you just have this and this in your hand, that's going to be 3 negates, which is quite strong. It's going to beat just about any rogue deck, and meta decks are going to struggle if you know the right cards to negate. Next up, we have Voldemonist Draconids. This is a Drytron ritual. We play it essentially just so we can get damage in, mostly on level 2. It's a 4,000 attack monster, but essentially, if the total level of monsters used for this card are 2 or less, this card can attack all special summon monsters your opponent controls, so it's good for clearing boards in that way. During your opponent's turn, you can banish monsters from your graveyard whose attack equals either 2,000 or 4,000, and then target monsters your opponent controls and send cards to the graveyard. So it's good to set up on turn 1. It goes with Mu Beta Fafnir, which we'll talk about in just a moment. The next card on this list is, so that does it for all the monsters. That is, I believe, 25 monsters. So it's going to be 25 monsters and 15 spells. No trap cards. Do not run trap cards in this deck. They're just about always bad. We run hand traps, which are quite a bit better in the Drytron deck, and we run Lightning Storm, which basically are flex cards. But Foolish Burial, this card's pretty self-explanatory, just sending a monster from our deck to our graveyard. I don't think you ever really want to be sending Ava, but that is something you could conceivably do. Most of the time you're going to be sending a Drytron name that you don't have, so that you can get the ball rolling and rolling and rolling. Cyber Emergency. So the only effect that we care about on this card is that we can activate it and search a Drytron from our deck. We're running 3 just because we want the maximum level of consistency. Preparation of Rites. This allows you to full combo off in a lot more situations. So if you draw a prep, you can ritual summon 4 times. Typically you're going to be capped at 3. This card just says add this card or this card basically from your deck to your hand. And then if you've got a ritual spell in your graveyard, Voldemonist Drytron, you can add that back to your hand. Lightning Storm, because it's like the best going second card in the format, and it's really, really good against Eldritch. Drytron Nova essentially has the same Drytron effect that will prevent you from normal summoning, or prevent you from special summoning monsters that could be normal summoned, but it just summons a Drytron from your deck, which is really good to get the names going. Proud of Prosperity, because we just want the most consistency we can. Voldemonist Drytron. This card basically, this is like a longer explanation, but essentially what this card does is you're allowed to ritual summon monsters from your hand or graveyard, but you tribute cards, instead of using their levels, you tribute cards with the attack. So all the Drytrons have 2,000 attack, which means that one Drytron can summon any of these 3 monsters, and 2 Drytrons will summon this thing. The other effect of Drytron Voldemonist Drytron is that when it's in your graveyard, you can target a Drytron on your board and have its attack and add the card back to your hand. So that's what I mean. You can typically ritual summon 3 times. If you ritual summon one of this card, the second of this card, then you can add it back to your hand. You can only activate the second effect of Voldemonist once per turn, but that's kind of a good thing. Otherwise, this card would be completely broken. Elder Entity NTSS, so that we can send it off of Diviner and get a pop. Arclight, so that we can send it off of Herald and get a search. Both these cards are level 4, making it level 6, which is perfect to overlay into Beatrice, which is the next card we'll talk about. Beatrice is just a quick effect during either player's turn that we can send a monster, or we can send any card from our deck to the graveyard. So we're going to send one on our turn when we make this, and we're going to send one on their turn, typically before using another card we'll talk about to link into something on their turn. And I'll explain I'll kind of leave the combos out of this video, because I think there's going to need to be a dedicated kind of combo guide, or I'll just talk about replays and stuff. But this card basically allows you to search. So FA Dawn Dragster, you make this card with a level 6 Diviner and any of your Drytrons. And basically this card is just it's a once per turn. So I believe once per turn when your opponent activates a spell trap effect, you can reduce this card's level by 2, and if you do negate that activation, you destroy that card. So it's just an extra little negate layer you can make on in this deck. Lyra Lusk, this is part of the Divine Arsenal A Zeus package. Basically, this card gets a direct attack. When we attack, we can summon Zeus. We'll talk about Zeus, what Zeus does in just a second. But you make this with 2 level 1s. Mubeta Fafnir is essential in this deck. This card allows you to use the materials that are under this card as tributes for your ritual summons, which is pretty insane. When this card is special summoned, it also sends a Drytron card from your deck to your graveyard. And then the last effect is that if you control a machine ritual monster, i.e. just this guy, he's the only one in your deck, you can attach a material and negate a spell trap. So it's just an extra negate as well. And we run 2 of that because it does come up. Downward Magician is part of the Lyra Lusk package. You overlay into Downward on your opponent's turn, or in your main phase 2. Already talked about Beatrice. Last thing I'll say about Zeus. Zeus just basically says it's a quick effect that if you've dealt damage, if you attacked with an Xyz this turn, which is your Assembled Nightingale, you can overlay an Xyz onto this card. So you're going to overlay Nightingale, main phase 2, or Nightingale attack directly, main phase 2, Downward Magician, and then AA Zeus. And then basically what Zeus says is that you can attach 2 materials from this card, send all other monsters on the field, or all other cards from the field to the graveyard. And you can do that twice, because this card's going to have 4 materials. The 2 materials under Assembled Nightingale itself, and Downward Magician. So having 2 Zeus procs can be pretty good. We're typically not going into that often. Link Karibo, just sometimes we need to link off the Drytron cards on the field so that we can use their effects in the graveyard, which is just like maximum value. And then this card has a card in effect that can change the opponent's monster to 0, and then this card can also basically recur back for free by tributing a level 1 monster. Our Drytrons are perfect for that. So an extra link material basically every turn is not bad. IP Masquerena, this card is insanely powerful. One of the first cards I would recommend making. Basically during your opponent's turn, it's a link 2, and you make it with 2 non-links, but during your opponent's turn, you're allowed to link summon, which is completely bonkers, and you link summon into this card, Nightmare Unicorn. When this card's link summoned, you can discard 1 card, shuffle 1 card on the field into the deck. Having that extra layer of basically just a shuffle in addition to whatever negates you were able to set up is really, really powerful, and doing it on your opponent's turn is awesome. And then IP Masquerena is basically enabling this card. Union Carrier. So what Union Carrier says, and this is another card. This is what I mean. There's so many options in this deck, but this card basically allows you to equip a card from the deck, and it gains 1,000 attack. So first of all, you can only make it with 2 monsters with the same type or attribute, which is pretty much, I mean, everything in this deck's light. So that's good. And then when this card, so you can link summon, when this card is link summon or whatever, you can't use it as link material the turn you do that. The turn you link summon. You can target 1 monster you control, you equip it to itself most of the time, and you're going to add or equip an Eva from your deck to it, and then it'll have 2,000 attack, so you can actually use it as tribute to ritual summon for this, or this, and then get the Eva effect in the graveyard, which is quite strong. This card's banned in the TCG for a reason. There's a lot of reasons. This deck is really limited in the TCG But in Master Duel, it has pretty much never been stronger. I will say, Maxi is really good against your deck. Ash is pretty good against your deck. And these cards are getting played, but this deck just gives you so many options, and it has such a great grind game that I feel like as long as you're piloting it well, which, you know, I'm still kind of learning how to do, your matchups are going to be really good, and you're going to have a good win rate. This is hopefully what I'm going to be piloting all the way up to Platinum 1. Alright, let me know if you guys have any questions about the deck, or if you guys want to see kind of combos. I'll come out with some more replays, most likely today or tomorrow, kind of explaining, you know, my experience piloting the deck, what I've learned, what I can kind of hopefully pass on to you guys. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. Like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.